Hello and welcome to the October edition of Our People Speak, our online program that showcases our traditional ways in interior Alaska. I'm Sharon McConnell, Executive Director of Denakkanaaga. At this time of the year, individuals throughout Alaska are preparing for the upcoming winter months. And in modern times, it also means preparing for the future by attending meetings and events that are taking place at this time of year. On this edition of Our People Speak, we're very pleased to have with us Reverend Dr. Anna Frank, an elder originally from Minto, and college student Taniesha Moses of Northway, to discuss these traditional and modern ways of preparing for winter and the future. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And first of all, before we start into this discussion, if you could introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Well, who am I? I got my name from my parents. I don't know where in the world they got the name, but I guess it's from visitors who come because they didn't speak English in those days. But here I am and try to go on and continue living my life as a Native person, and encouraging young people to do the same.
And so you're originally from Minto. A lot of people know who you are, but
Old Minto, I would say. And now we have the new site, and we have the road system there, and besides many other new things.
So you're pretty humble, Reverend Dr. Anna Frank. You've been very involved in the Native community. Could you just tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got involved within the Native community?
I'm from Old Minto, born and raised there, but raised in a traditional way, like going to our camps every year. And I got started, I would say, from my Aunt Evelyn, who in the 50s, late 50s, I believe, 54 or somewhere, was the first unpaid health aid in the villages that year all over in our areas. And she would sometimes drag me along with her to check patients or check kids. And so a lot of the little kids would run in the house and hide under the bed because we had our little black bag like the doctors used to carry. And they know that sometimes we give them shots. And so I got involved that way with the health, and then just moved on with my life after that, raising my family, and that was it.
So thank you, Dr. Reverend Anna Frank. And now Taniesha Moses, I want to make sure I get your name right. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Taniesha Moses Chauncey, Nabia Ning Kate Sharon Emery. So my name is Taniesha Moses. I'm from Northway, and my mom is Sharon Emery. And I live here in Fairbanks, and I work at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, but I'm also a student in the master's program.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. So to get this discussion started, Reverend Anna Frank, you grew up traditionally in Old Minto area. What do you recall of when you were growing up getting ready for the winter time?
I think the first thing for me remembering is moving to the fish camp and getting all the fish that we need for the winter. And so that was preparing for getting the winter, prepared for the winter, is getting your food. And every season has different things that you could go after. Like in the fall time, you go get the moose, you go get the grouse. And as we move into the winter, then there's rabbit snaring or hunting rabbits. And so, but the moose is the biggest thing we prepare for the winter for it. And it's not just for your own little family, it's practically for those that did not get moose too, that we share with one another.
So the people in the village took care of each other.
Yes, So it's not individual thing when you're in a village.
So in the fall time, you'd also pick berries to prepare for the winter? Is
The
that
berries
right?
is in August, so we move with the month, and so berry picking is in July and August, cranberries, blueberries, and whatever berries there is, you know of. And so that's what we do. And then sometimes our dads would go upriver and cut wood and make a raft and bring the wood to the village. So we have the wood pile for the winter too.
So they would have to get all the wood in the fall time then?
And we didn't have chainsaw, so it took a long time.
Wow. And the whole community would go out and do that together, or families would do that? Or?
Usually the boys, to us sometimes, if there were no boys, and like my grandfather's family, he had all girls, well, the cousin boys would come over and help their grandpa get things ready for the winter. That's how I was raised, is that if there was no boys in the family, then the closest is my aunt, you know, who had boys. And so we relied on them too.
So how did the younger generation learn about these activities? Did you just have them get involved and do things as much as they could, or did you have them observe, or how did they learn all these activities?
I think it was taught in each family or by the communities. Some are very private, and I'll speak about me as a woman. It's up to my aunts to teach me what I have to do and how I have to take care of myself and becoming that young woman, like getting your period for the first time. There are certain things that you do. My dad reminded me one morning, I was going to school then, and he said, "Anna, you got to get up now. I'm going to eat." So, and that's all he had to say. I'm going to eat breakfast. That means I have to get up, prepare myself, I have to wash up, I have to go to the bathroom and get dressed all before he eat. And that's showing respect to our provider, our dad. And so these are traditional teachings. And so we hold that to our heart, you know, because that's one of the strong points in Native tradition is how you raise your young women.
All right. So Taniesha, you're of a younger generation. Growing up in a more modern time, what did your family do, or what did you observe of getting ready for winter?
So I grew up between my mom and living with my grandparents. And when I lived with my grandma in the fall time, we would spend time getting cranberries and blueberries. She would show me what kind of mushrooms to pick, like by birch trees. A few times we would gather roots and sometimes birch bark. Not too often did we do birch bark, but birch bark is good in the fall time because it's before the winter and it's like frozen. So just like teaching me like when is a good time to harvest these things. And also like Anna said, stacking wood. Living with my grandparents, I helped them out a lot, so I would do that. But also like my uncles and cousins would do that too, but sometimes it was me. And
so backing up just a little bit,
sure.
You mentioned getting roots and then the birch bark. For those that are wondering that didn't grow up in a village, what are you talking about? Why would you gather those items?
So roots are, I think they're like the troth, the potato plant, and you can eat them. And so in the fall time, and I think in the springtime you can get them too, that's a good time to kind of harvest that. So if I can remember, it's kind of like a bush, and you have to like dig down and get those roots. And you have to find them and kind of identify them. And and you just kind of remember where you saw them last time. And so we could eat those, but also we'd get roots for baskets as well. I think from the spruce trees and the birch bark, we would get that to make the baskets, and the roots would be used for the baskets as well. So different kinds of roots, but yeah.
So what are some of your favorite memories of the fall time for you?
Fall time is just such a rich time with like lots of different smells. Like people, if they're lucky and they get moose meat, there's a lot of processing the moose, and the smell of like high bush cranberries, and just being out in like nature with my grandma, just the smell and the feeling, and just like hearing stories from her, and being able to ask questions. That is just like such a rich memory. My favorite memories is that time of year with her.
And Chief Frank, what about you? What are some of your memories from when you were growing up that have stayed with you about the fall time?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. It's hard to remember because we just don't do them anymore. But one of the things is always getting ready of how you're going to feed your family, what you're going to teach your family. And during the fall time, I think it's for our brothers being taught how to become good hunters. And we have to, as a woman, a sister, we have to honor them also. Our men used to come back from hunting, and they would hang their pack sack outside on the wall of the house, and their guns, snowshoe, everything they put away. And when you come in the house, the men don't just throw their gloves on the floor. There's always a drying rack on top of the wood stove. You put your gloves there. And so those are the things in the fall time. We do different teaching for the younger people. And our parents or our aunts or uncles are the ones that help us go through that. But there are so many things that we are taught as daily living. Not just you do this in the fall time, but they teach us how to walk through the months of how you survive. And to me, that's what I was taught. I was taught how to survive if I'm by myself. And I remember going to the spring camp, and my mom and dad would go out and hunt muskrats or whatever we need. And my grandma and I were the only ones that stayed home, and my grandma had a stroke and she was paralyzed. So I had to become that sitter for my grandma and watch her. And so that's what they taught us, to care for our elders that way. And so I had to find out, how to take care of an elderly lady. And so that's just daily things that you pick up on, and how to become an adult and still wanting to play, but back in the back of your mind, there's always things you have to learn about and be responsible for.
So are there any type of things that you're teaching your grandchildren and great-grandchildren about preparing for winter? Or because it's a little different now, obviously, than when you grew up, but are there things that you share with your grandchildren?
What I share, some is verbal, but I take my grandchildren out fishing. I take them out to hunt. That was their grandpa's job, but we lost him. And so I became their teacher, and the oldest boy in the family become their teacher. So I'm teaching my grandson how to hunt. Listen. You have to listen for different sounds of animals. And so, and just recently, his mom and her husband took him out hunting, I'm not hunting, but to the fish camp, preparing the fish camp to close up or whatever you do. And I tell him, you know, moose season is close, but you could still hunt grouse. And so he came back and he said, Grandma, do you want me to come over here and help you put away the grouse? And that means he caught it. And I said, no, I think you could just do that over your house. You clean it up, put it away, fix it so I could get it in the freezer and get it out when I need to cook it. And so I'm teaching him how to prepare and what to hunt in the fall time.
Taniesha, what about you? You have young children. Mm-hmm. Are you teaching them anything or showing them different things in the fall time or this time of year?
Yeah, so I think for a while they thought all food just came from the grocery store. So I've really been trying to learn myself and kind of practice the things that we did growing up. So that's like berry picking, and at first I think they got really bored, but now they're starting to enjoy it. They love having berries in the freezer, and also just how to respect like the land and the animals. So like, for example, I've been learning about like different medicines like chaga, and my one son, August, he's really into it. And I'm teaching him that, you know, don't take all of it, you know, leave some, and just, you know, how to be respectful, but also like, I guess, sustainable. Also teaching them about like, you know, how our foods from our lands are so good for us, and, you know, maybe a hamburger tastes good, but like moose soup or the different foods that we eat are so good for, you know, our bodies and for our soul too, because these animals are giving themselves to us so that we can be healthy.
So this time of year, in addition, after getting ready for the winter months, both, in, you know, we've heard about the traditional ways, and you've just explained what you do with your young children. We also, at this time of year, everyone around the state of Alaska is getting ready to go to the big conventions, the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention, the First Alaskans Institute's Elders and Youth Conference, both big gatherings for the Native people of Alaska. And Anna, in the early years, both you and your late husband, Richard Frank, were very involved in getting the land claims passed and working for the Native community. Could you just talk a little bit about what the early years were like versus what they are now?
Well, when I was younger, raising my kids, I'm the one that kept the home fires burning while Richard went out and did all these official business, and one of them is the native land claims. But the first encounter, we've always had problems in our area because it's good duck hunting and whatever animal comes there. We get hunters from Fairbanks. So we were always watchful in how we protect that. And I remember someone telling me this story. They lived here in Fairbanks. They read in the newspaper that they were going to put a road from Murphy Dome down to Chattanooga. So you could take your boats down to the Chattanooga River and go out in the flats. And so Richard was working on the river boats then. And so they jumped in their car, went to Nenana, and hoped they caught Richard there. Well, it just happened the boat left that morning. And someone told them, well, if you maybe jump on a plane, you might be able to catch him there. And that's what they did. They wrote a letter and told him what was happening, and Richard was the chief at that time. So he signed whatever papers to stop the road going into Minto Flats. And to this day, the road has never been, there's a dirt road, but not where you could drive your nice car and look out in the flats and, go down the river in a boat. And so that was one of the encounters we began to have with people coming in. But Richard has always been involved in the things that's been happening in Minto. And he was the chief and helped a lot of the people that didn't know how to read and write. And so that's how we got involved, working with the native leaders there that spoke their language. And he kept doing that and got involved with the native land claims and with many other leadership from different areas in Alaska. And they talk about everything that we will now have to speak up about. And that was hard. So it was everything. I was just reading in the newspaper how many years in 1970, in the 70s, I think, that Fairbanks voted not to have native language in the school system. They voted that out. And so that was some of the issues we had to deal with as Native people. Even when we first started Fairbanks Native Association, the people around here didn't know what we were shooting for or what we were, I shouldn't use the word, but what we had to deal with. And one of it is a boarding school. We had to think about bringing our kids into school because Minto didn't have high school, so I had to bring my kids in. And their father lived here and I lived in Minto because I had a job in Minto. And so we had to deal with a lot with the boarding school and how our children got treated. And they were not used to the city. They just had village life then. So that's some of those issues that we're still dealing with.
So what do you think are some of the main issues that the Native community is dealing with right now? Of course, we have the fish situation, that everyone, the crisis, I should say, with salmon. But what are some of the issues that you see as a Native leader now?
I think there's still issues that we have not quite gotten there yet. I think there's just misunderstanding of what they think and who we are. And so I can say coming from the village into Fairbanks is so different. You have to change your way of thinking. And we did that. And we got so good at it, we kind of lost our language and all of our way that how to live our lives. And so we have to teach our children in a different way. Nowadays, we teach our children to become leaders for the village, not just for the village, but for the corporation. We need education with that. And I think it's very important. And I think we're doing a good job right now, raising our kids and going to school and pick up more and more of what we can do as Native people or just citizens, not just of the village, but in the city too. Mm-hmm.
So Taniesha, if I may, you're in your 30s, 40s? 30s?
29.
29, oh my gosh, you're really the younger generation. So from your perspective, what are some of the issues that you feel are really important to the Native community? I mean, what got you involved with the Native community? Because you are young and to be truthful, folks your age, they may not get too involved. They might, just say leave it to other people, but you've been very involved. What are some of the things that you see?
Yeah, so You know, honestly, going for higher education was a really long journey. And I just kind of started off with just doing it because I thought it was the right thing. And didn't really know why I was getting in, you know, going to school. You know, when you're living in the village, it's very different. And you don't really need a college degree to be successful. But here in the city, you do. And so I wanted to make more money at first, but then I realized that in a lot of the positions, especially positions of power, there's not a lot of Native representation. So I really wanted to just make a difference, just be a voice, be somewhere where I can share our experiences and kind of stand up for, you know, maybe for some problems that we have. But now I am now going for my master's degree, and I see that there's just so much work that's already been done, but there's still so much work to keep going, and there's so many things that are happening like right now. We need more of that representation everywhere, and not just in like social work, which is where I was interested in, but in every single field. We need our voices, our experiences, our traditional knowledge to be able to kind of guide these changes. And I don't think it takes much. I think that anybody, no matter what you're interested in, just like being yourself, you know, you can make a difference. And so I think that was answering your question.
So was there any one thing that really sparked your interest in getting involved in the Native community?
Yeah, I had mentioned earlier that I grew up with my grandparents and my mom, and we had social workers involved in our lives, and I felt a lot of, you know, shame and kind of, I guess like embarrassment too. And so it took me a long time to kind of understand why I had those feelings, but I think I just really wanted, that really pushed me to be that difference and not just, I guess, complain about it or, you know, feel sad about it, but just really kind of inspired me to make that jump outside of my comfort zone. And really education empowers you, empowers me to be able to do those things. So after I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I had the intention of, you know, spending more time in the village with my grandma, you know, spending more time talking with her because she would always want to talk in her language and she wanted me to learn, and I wanted to learn how to, you know, sew from her and bead, and I had all these intentions after I graduated to do that because I kind of put it off. And a month after I graduated, you know, she passed away, and that grief, that really pushed me to, you know, be more curious, not just from my grandma, not only learn from her, but learn from everybody. And there's so much wisdom and so much knowledge in our communities and our elders. And I just want to learn from, you know, everybody. And I want to be able to teach my children and keep that going, because I feel that burden too. Now that my grandma's gone, she was like our culture bearer in our family. Now that she's gone, I feel kind of that pressure to be able to learn and keep it going as well.
Mm-hmm. So Anna, for her generation, my generation, even your generation, how do we use traditional knowledge to address these current situations that we're facing? Yeah.
I just read in the newspaper that Fairbanks, I think, is getting some funds to teach Native language. And I think we need to get the parents involved because, again, boarding school took away our language. I mean, we left it behind. And so before, that's all we heard is our language. And so, and some of the kids that left 4 years or more away from home, you know, will lose that. they wouldn't keep it up because English is used more in schools and colleges and everything. And so we have to do something with this system. If you're teaching language in the school, then teach the mother and fathers who lost their language too, with sending a card saying, this is what your child is learning. Can you help them with this word? And it might help the parents to pick up on their own language too, and gives them something that they're offering a child, or they're actually helping with the education in that way. So there's just so many things that we could do, but the thing is getting involved is a little bit harder. It's just easier to watch other people to, become the school teacher and teach. But I find out personally, if you want to have something better for your family and learning and different things, you have to get involved and you have to use your voice. And that's what I'm doing. I'm using my voice to make the change so our children wouldn't struggle like we did when we were in school. You know, some of us were taught to speak English in school. And maybe some people don't like to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I remember our teacher using words that he thinks we don't understand. But that teacher was a good teacher. He taught us how to use the dictionary too. And one of the things that we learned called us Airedales in school. And so we're all wondering, Airedales? What's Airedales? And so I said, go get the dictionary, let's look. And then someone said, it's a dog. And so, believe it or not, we don't talk about things like that. But I find out it was very hurtful for us. But we did not say anything. And I'm not going to keep my mouth shut if someone is degrading my grandchildren. And when I first moved to Fairbanks, my daughter came home and said, Mom, what's a savage? And I told her why the reason they called us that, And so I try to explain without downgrading and to teach our children what can we do to make a difference. And that's not getting angry and fight and all that. What can we do to make a difference? And that's what we're doing today. We're trying to make a difference.
So Taniesha, you just heard her speak, what she went through, what she's teaching her grandchildren. At your age, what do you think, how can we use, from your perspective, how can we use traditional knowledge that we all have that's come down through the generations to deal with current situations that we're facing as Native people? I know it's a loaded question.
No, I'm just thinking, I was just having a conversation with somebody about how our traditional knowledge is not written down, but there's so much knowledge in just like our stories and so much strength and resilience that comes through those stories, and how I feel like science is kind of just catching up. And so I think that we can empower ourselves to believe our stories, to listen to our elders, to kind of help guide us through hard times. Our elders have gone through really hard times, and not just boarding schools, but pandemics as well. Pandemics, TB, like real poverty, and they've, survived. And so I think that just being able to spend more time with our elders and talk to them, if you have them in your lives, or you can adopt an elder, I've kind of adopted Anna in the last couple of years. Yeah.
That's good advice. Along with this traditional knowledge comes our values. And I know we've talked about values a lot in the past. We have the Athabascan values. What does that mean to you, Anna, when you think about the values that we have about how to conduct ourselves? How do you relate that to preparing, not just for winter and for meetings and stuff, but just for life in general?
I'd like to take what we put on a cardboard paper of all our values, or some of our values, and I would like to hear the younger people explain what it means to them. Because one of the strong values people really don't realize is humor. We have a lot of humor with our Native people. That doesn't mean laughing at people, it's laughing with people. And before you make fun of other people, you make fun of yourself first. And that's what humor is. It's not laughing at people, it's laughing with people. And what does that mean to you? Our kids don't know that. Leadership, you know, our values is teaching leadership. And if you want to vote for a good Native chief, you teach them the Native values first. Then they'll understand it's not just in the white man world. But our language is very, very strong in how to use it. And so to become a leader, it's not focusing on yourself, it's focusing on your village and what do you want for that village. And, you know, it's not just one individual, it's the whole group of people. And the chief does not have to make that decision alone. He or she has other people sitting around him with him and discussing those problems. So they all make that decision together, not one individual.
So Taniesha, when you think about the Native values, our Athabascan values, what comes to mind?
So I have 3 young children, and one of our Athabascan values is love for children. And growing up, I've seen that everywhere. Living in the village, you have multi-generational homes. So you have maybe your grandparents, your parents, your younger siblings, your kids might be in the home too. And working at the university or even living in Fairbanks. But specifically in going to school, there's just a bunch of people like the same age. There's all like mid-aged people, so like 20 to like 40, maybe 50. And it's so strange. And sometimes it can feel kind of hard to balance that like home, like having a family and like being a professional, right? And so I remember that value of love for children and just kind of use it to kind of give myself permission to let my kids be a part of my work life or my school life. Sometimes they're in class with me on the computer, sometimes they're at work with me, and I just allow myself to kind of be uncomfortable with it or let other people be uncomfortable because, children they shouldn't be excluded from places. And there's other values too, but that one comes to mind.
Right. So in closing, what kind of, what would you tell others about preparing, not just for the winter, but also preparing for the future as Native people?
For me, it's speaking up. Start telling your story and what it means to you and how you learned. And from me, it's telling my story. And I'm finally beginning to feel comfortable telling that story because I've learned from it. I've learned to respect myself as well as respecting the other person. And that's what our parents and grandparents try to teach us is respect. And I carry that very highly. And I just can't get all the benefits. I got to share the benefits with other people, and that's my speaking for them, those that don't have a voice, or too bashful, or they've been hurt, or whatever. They can't express themselves, and I could help them with my voice.
And what about you, Taniesha, for your generation? What would you tell them?
So what I've kind of learned in, like, from my education is that, you know, Indigenous people have stewarded the lands for thousands of years, but 80% of all of the world's biodiversity is on Indigenous people's lands. But we only own 20%. So we have done a good job at stewarding our lands, and we need to continue to fight for that. And I think, you know, getting an education, you can do that, not just by keeping your traditional values, but bringing that with you to the table and combining that with your education and helping shape our decisions, helping shape our policies and the way we do things with our traditional values, because I think we've done a good job at it for like in time immemorial, and we need to keep doing that. So.
All right. So before we end, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I would just like to say to the young people, don't give up. They have a lot of good values, and learn to respect yourself, because someday you're going to be sitting in the chair I'm sitting in, and still speaking up for your tribe, and not just one family, but the whole tribe. And so I know my children and my grandchildren is going to carry that on, because I push it in my family. My daughters, you know, is just like Richard Frank, Roxanne. She's involved in what the health problems and all that. And she's also on the corporation board, and just learning things like that. And so get involved and respect yourself more. Thank you.
Do you have any closing comments?
Just that I'm happy to be here speaking with you, Anna and Sharon, and thanks for having me.
No, thank you both for being here and talking about this.
And thank you for coming this far.
Yes.
You put on your snowshoe and you're breaking trail for my great-grandchildren. Remember that.
Yeah. You may not think it, but you are a young leader, you know. So we appreciate you both being here, and we thank you for joining us on Our People Speak for October 2023. Please join us again next month in November. I'm Sharon McConnell. Thank you.